It's June 13th, and we're standing here on this south-facing bedding thicket that we created back in March. It looks exactly how we would want it to look, but I'm going to go ahead and rewind to the beginning of that process. Hey guys, today we are going to be combining land management tactics with hunting tactics to create the ultimate rut stand. So to start off, we have had this Novix up here for, well, what is it, 12, 13, 14 years, however many years that we've had access to the property. We've had a stand up there on that ridge top, and the way this all lays out is it's a giant south-facing slope. We are on the crest of the hill to where it breaks, and then it will go into a north-facing slope. So the reason we are there is because there is a road system that runs across here, internal road system just for like a UTV or whatever you want to drive down it, that was already there. They may have used it for logging or whatever, and it just seemed like a great spot the way the topography laid out. South-facing slope. We hunt it with a south wind or west or southwest blowing off the back side of the hill. The majority of the deer traffic is coming from the south, as there's an ag field probably 400 yards from here, a giant staging plot that we have clover in, and the deer start to filter back this way. So it's a great stand for late October. The deer filtering back from food, coming back into bedding, and we're intercepting them as they go back to bed further into the property right here. And so the way that this lays out, it's kind of like a big bowl, and they funnel back around it. Down in the bottom there's a pretty heavy eroded ditch, so they somewhat avoid it, circling around it through this bowl and then coming back in front of us. And so with our hunting tactics, it's very simple. We just slip in the backside, pop into the stand, and intercept deer as they come back from food to going to bedding. So right here is a pretty good indicator that this was logged. Our guess is anywhere from 15 to maybe 25 years ago. It was heavily logged. I mean, the canopy's been opened up, 60%. There's a mix of hardwoods in here, but less desirable trees, I would say, as there's nothing really good left. Here and there, there's a few decent trees, but all the crummy trees were left. But I'm not too worried about it from a logging standpoint. Obviously, we're here to hunt, and our goal today is to take this 60% canopy that's opened up and open it up even more. Something I wanted to also mention is that in the last, years that we've had, decade that we've had this, we've ran prescribed fire through here, I think 3 times. And with that open canopy, there was already a good amount of sunlight hitting the forest floor. And so running the fire through here, we're just managing native habitat, and there's a heavy presence of aromatic sumac, saplings, brambles all throughout, little bits of grass coming in. So great native habitat. It's very clear that it's a good bedding area, as we've seen the deer activity in here over the years and found many sheds in here. It's awesome. It's one of the best spots on this farm. So today, our goal with our land management tactics is to just open that canopy up even more. So we're talking 60% already down here of sunlight hitting the floor. We're going to open it up in about an acre and a half area in front of the stand to about 70 to 90%. So open up more sunlight in here in front of this stand, just small area. And then also to the west of it, where the west of it, they didn't log, you can tell. So we're gonna have to do a much heavier cutting. But the end goal is, like I said, 70 to 90% of the sunlight hitting the forest floor. And once we are done with that, we're going to follow up with prescribed fire. So right here, we are now about 100 yards out in front of this stand, so to the south. And down here, you're talking like 80, 90% open canopy, and you can see the response that we've gotten here from the fires that we've ran through here, all the sunlight hitting the forest floor. This is exactly what we want to create up there in front of the stand within bow range. So oftentimes when we're hunting that stand, we have observed deer filtering back through here, coming around the ditch I was talking about down in the valley, and they slow roll right through here, just feeding, just kind of taking their time. So sometimes they'll even bed in here, and it's great to see. But the problem is they're out in front of us at 100 yards and not in bow range. So today, our goal is to take what we have right here and implement the exact same thing right out in front of the stand within bow range. And it's going to be awesome. I mean, we're going to have not only food on the forest floor, but cover as well. Probably more deer activity within range, and then bucks circling downwind, hopefully, since it is a rut stand, to hopefully catch scent of does. And it's a pretty simple tactic. I mean, what we have right here is what we're going to implement up there. Now that we're up here by the stand, you can tell there's a much higher stem count of trees, which means with that higher stem count, there's not nearly as much sunlight reaching the forest floor, and that's something I want to specify on. I'm not really referring to sunlight hitting the forest floor right now because we're in the dormant season. I'm more referring to the growing season, and that's when you want the sunlight hitting the forest floor. So during the growing season, you got to picture all of these trees are going to be leafed out above me, and right now you see branches going everywhere. And if you can look up at the canopy and picture all those leaves being on the trees, it's pretty well got everything shaded out. So today we're going to use 3 different tactics of you know, opening up the canopy, and that's going to be a combination of girdling trees, felling trees, and then we're also going to do a little bit of hinge cutting. So the first method of cuts that I want to go over is a hinge cut. I'm not a huge proponent of hinge cutting, but in this particular situation we're going to hinge cut to somewhat divert deer. And so the stand right here behind Chandler is about 10 yards, and we are straight east of it. We do not want deer to the east of us because they're downwind. We don't want deer to the north of us or northwest of us because they're also downwind with the wind that we hunt this stand on. And the way that this sets up, this is starting to slope down to the north, a north-facing slope, and we're essentially just diverting them from going downwind of us by hinge cutting what is going to be kind of a V. The V is going to go east, like I said, and then the other wing to the V will go to the northwest, that direction. So really all I'm going to do here is, this tree's already naturally leaning that direction. I'm going to come in about waist height and cut in about 50–60% of the tree. As I get closer to the center of the tree, I'm going to let up on my blade and sort of feel that tree to start to break over. If the tree were kind of leaning this way, I'd feel it breaking over, you know, the backwards this direction. And at that point, I'll stop cutting and take my hand and just push the tree over the direction that I want it to fell. With a bigger diameter tree, it can be very dangerous, which is why I'm not a huge proponent of it. But we're only going to be cutting trees that are 6 to 8 inches at max in DBH, so diameter breast height. This one here is probably 6 inches in diameter. It's about, you know, on the larger side of what I want to hinge cut, which is fine though today. And so I'm gonna hinge it over that direction, and then a couple more down the line to just divert deer from going downwind of us, because there is a heavy trail down here, and what we're doing here is mainly just blocking them. So this is the direction that we access the stand from, right through here. We've now blocked it with this hinge cut of these few trees right here, hopefully diverting deer from traveling back here behind the stand. This is how we access. These trees will remain alive for a few years just like this, which will obviously have the canopy on the floor, we'll have leaves, and just really kind of creating a little natural, I guess, wall, if you will, or screen to get into the tree, and then while also blocking deer from traveling behind us. So on this other wing from our stand here, there aren't very many small DBH trees. There's one here that I'm going to hinge over, but as far as like others, there's not many left. So with those, I will fell some of these in here, but I wanted to hit on tree species. In here, there's a heavy presence of hickories. Obviously a very high stem count, so I'm going to go pretty heavy on the cutting in here, and I'm not too worried about what I'm going to leave, but the ones that I do leave, I'm going to probably study pretty heavily and just make sure they're the ones I want to leave. Like this tree, for instance, is tall and straight. This hickory is. The rest of them are all leaning over, have splits and branches. This looks like a good healthy one that I will leave. And then the other tree species that is mainly in here is white oak. I'm going to try to leave quite a few of the white oaks that I can, because they're the mass producing and just more desirable tree from a logging standpoint. There's a handful of softwoods in here. If I find a small softwood within this wing, I'll hinge that, but mainly what I'm seeing in here is hickory and oak, but mostly hickory. So I'll hinge a couple more of these, then we'll go into felling and girdling. So our next method of tree cutting here is going to be felling a tree. So I'm going to flush cut this tree, just essentially what most people would call cutting it down. And the first thing I want to do is just look at it and make sure there aren't any hazards, like widow's makers that are going to fall down and hit me, dead branches, whatever it may be, vines. There's really nothing like that on this hickory, so I'm not worried about that. Check my work area, which like an escape route, the tree's leaning this way. I have an open area that I've already identified where I want the tree to fall. So on my escape route's this direction. I'm clear of any hazards or anything, running into anything else. I can get away from the tree when the tree starts to fall, so I'm good that way. And again, like I said, looking the direction I want it to go, I don't see any hazard that it's going to hit. Like there aren't any other branches or trees that I feel like it's going to get caught or snagged on, so I'm definitely sending it that direction. Next, I want to identify where my face cut is going to be, which is right here on the front of the tree. And so I'm going to cut into this tree about 30% of the depth to where I'll stop to where my hinge is going to be, which will hold my tree as it falls. And I'm going to do my face cut. My face cut's going to be about 80% of the diameter of the tree. So like 80% of the front of this is going to come off. And then from there I'll cut in from the back. And as I get closer to that hinge of the tree will then begin to tip over, because I'm cutting all the fibers on the back end where all the tension is, and that, with physics, the tree will fall over this direction. So let's fell this tree. Something else I wanted to mention on my face cut that I'm going to start with here is I'm going to first line up my sight bar. On your steel chainsaw, it'll have a sight bar, which is this line right here, and I'm going to just line it up with where I want the direction that I want this tree to fall on, which is just like that. So that's how I will start my face cut, with my line like that.
Boom.
All right, so here we have like 4 oaks in a row. They're both pretty decent size in diameter. I don't want to fell these trees because this is right out in front of the stand. The stand's right here at about 20 yards. I don't want to create a bunch of structure right out in front of it. I still want to keep our shooting lanes open. So what I'm going to do is girdle these trees. With these 4 right here, I've already looked up and identified which one of the 4 I want to leave. So out of all of these, I'm leaving basically 25% of the canopy right here. One of these, this one right here, has like a couple dead branches, seems less desirable. The other one is the weaker one. It's the smallest of the 4. It's already being choked out and starting to die. And then the remaining 2 have Ys. One of them is pretty far up the Y, and the other one's quite a bit lower. So I'm going to eliminate that one, leaving the one tree that has a Y way up in the top of the tree. Seems like the most healthy tree out of all 4. And the rest of these I will girdle. So what I'm going to do with the girdle is I will come in with my chainsaw and cut in about 1 inch or 2 into the tree, creating a ring all the way around it, cutting off the cambium layer, which is where all the sap flow is within the tree, and eliminating all the sap flow from here on up. I will put 2 rings in. Reason being is the lower one might not potentially may not cut off all sap flow, so some still could maybe come through, or the tree could heal. Well, if you've created another one up top, you're eliminating any remaining sap flow that may be seeping through that other ring and killing the tree standing essentially, or at least from the stem up. Now if I treat the tree with herbicide, Tordon RTU that I've got over here, it will kill everything, including the roots. If not, you may have shoots come up from where you've girdled or below or out of the ground, keeping the tree alive, which is fine on some of your hardwood trees. I'll probably kill 1 or 2 of these and then leave 1 of them alive from the girdle down. I won't treat it with herbicide, which will create some more food and a little bit of structure on the floor here. So I'll start with a girdle. So with the girdle, when I do my ring around the tree, I'm going to go around like this, following the direction of my blade to use the chainsaw to guide me around the tree. It'll also save you from dulling a blade faster by actually going with it rather than working against the blade.
Midwest Land Group has changed the way land is sold and is the only brokerage to offer a 100% satisfaction guarantee. If you're looking to buy or sell property, don't before you talk to us.
All right, so we've blown in our fire lines with the backpack blowers. Again, this is only like an acre area, so nothing too crazy. There's not a heavy, dense layer of leaf litter, so I don't suspect any fire hazards. We've got a little bit of a breeze, but you want some breeze if you're doing a timber burn. I would say most importantly, if you're not comfortable with fire, the number one thing is to make sure you have a good fire break-in and that you don't have crazy high winds, because that is how your fire is most likely going to get out. The next thing is checking your relative humidity. Today we've got humidity levels in the 30s, which is good for a timber burn. That's on the lower end. If you were burning grass today, you'd want it higher, like more towards 50%. But we're gonna light our backfire. So we're gonna start down at the bottom, the downwind side, let it slowly roll up the hill. It's gonna climb very, very slowly. get a good black line established on the back, and then wrap it around to the front, and then it'll come over the hill, because we put our fire break in on the back side of this hill. That's where our head fire is probably going to gain the most speed, coming up this little hill, and once it reaches the top and starts to go downhill, it'll slow down. But again, making sure you have a good fire line in, at least 2 people. Chandler and I are here together. We've done a lot of prescribed burns together, so we're familiar with fire. The more people, the merrier in most cases. This one, again, is a small fire, so I don't anticipate anything getting out or any issues, but we're going to start down here on the downwind side. Yeah. That's pretty good there. Go to the other side.
Would you look at that? Burning, and I found me a shed. Hot diggity.
We completed our prescribed burn in here. Everything went as planned, thankfully. So we've now hit the natural reset button, and it'll be exciting to see how this responds. I'm sure there'll be a ton of native growth. I mean, with what we already saw down here, I expect to be the same up here now, right in front of the stand. We blocked off that deer trail behind the stand with our hinge cutting that was like a V. And I believe everything is complete for this little area that we implemented hunting tactics with land management tactics. So walking in this first area of the bedding thicket is right here by the stand. We've got the Novix right here, and then you saw in the video we tried to hinge trees with like a V shape on the back side of the stand where our wind would be blowing. And the one thing that I'm already seeing is a lot of these trees that we hinged are hickory, which was intentional, and we thought that they would continue to stay alive. But the thing that I've already learned by looking at this is that we killed a lot of these trees, killed a lot of these trees with the fire that we ran through here right after we cut them. So if I could rewind and redo this again, I would have ran the fire through here first and then hinged the trees, because we didn't want to top kill these branches that we left on the forest floor. So that's unfortunate. We still have a lot of structure and debris on the ground, which is great. And it's not to say that I can't come in here and hinge a few more, because there's really not as much sunlight hitting the forest floor, seeing it now that we're in full foliage, as I thought there would be. I would like to see a little bit more. So I can still come back in and fell a few of these trees and create more hinge cuts. But that's just one thing offhand that I learned looking at this in the beginning. But there's still a massive amount of regrowth and new growth coming up on the forest floor. There's a lot of aromatic sumac. There's some oak regen on the forest floor, as well as hickory coming in, and then tons of native species and native forbs coming back in, and a lot of blackberry too. So that's exciting to see. But right offhand, the hinging and then burning, I would have done it backwards the other way around if we could come to this again. But we've got more to do over the years, and that's how you learn. So now we're on the actual south-facing portion of this bedding thicket. Earlier we were up there by the stand, which the hill dumps off and is a little bit more north-facing, but the large portion of this bedding thicket is south-facing out front of the stand. And you can see like a lot of these trees were recently felled, because we came back in here, I think 2 weeks ago, and we just realized that we could have put more sunlight on the ground, just like I was saying up there. And so Chandler came in and dropped a bunch of these trees and then hinged a handful of them. So there's more structure, more sunlight hitting the forest floor, and it looks phenomenal. There's a heavy presence of fragrant sumac in here, aromatic sumac, and then you know, just a bunch of the same plants that we were seeing up there. Oak regeneration, hickory, and lots of native forbs coming in. It looks great, but I want to come down here and show you guys something that's interesting. So here's an elm tree that we simply flush cut, just dropped it right here, about 6-8 inches tall. And you can see here that all the shoots came up immediately this spring, and the deer have just been hammering it, browsing everything off of it. There's only a handful of leaves left. Why would they prefer that over, you know, out here? I'm not saying that they don't feed out here, but they're obviously hitting that extremely hard. And when we brought Matt Dye in here the other day to look this stand over, he pointed that out, and it's actually because this tree has such a larger root, I guess, diameter, or spread out roots throughout here, and when you flush cut it, it's throwing all those nutrients it had in this long stem straight into those shoots that are coming up. So there's a lot of nutrients being pumped into shoots, so this tree can just bounce back from us cutting it, and that's why the deer are targeting that species rather than all these small little plant species that are coming up. It's not to say that they're not feeding and browsing throughout here, because I'm sure they are. There's a massive amount of food that's on the forest floor now from what there was before, but it's pretty cool to see this right here. All right, just to recap what we've done here, we reduced the canopy by about 80 to 90% on this mostly south-facing slope here in front of this south wind stand, where the wind blows off the backside to the north of the stand, and just killed off a lot of less desirable trees such as honey locust. We flush cut the softwoods, the elm, the hackberry, and then as well as some of the hardwoods like the hickory, because there is a heavy presence of hickory. And then a lot of the hickory we hinge cut or directly fell, the bigger ones, just to create structure on the forest floor. And then by opening that canopy, there's a massive amount of food on the floor. So it's kind of a post-rut, late season set here, where a lot of the deer are filtering back in from the food to bed in the mornings, and that's when we oftentimes hunt this stand. So it's only going to make this better. We've got more structure for bedding, and then food on the forest floor to just hold more deer, hopefully have a better hunt. And we've hung a reconyx in here to basically sit and see what's used in the area over the next 7 to 8 months. I'm excited. So if you guys enjoyed this video and learned something, why don't you check out this other video I did on cedar eradication on the other side of the farm, where my dad and I went in and eliminated a monoculture of cedars, left a handful there, burned it, and then the native habitat that came back is phenomenal. So check that video out if you get a chance. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.